Good evening. Hey, it's your girl, Coach Vonda. How y'all doing tonight? How you doing? How you doing? I'm so happy to be back with you guys again. I told you I was going to do better, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do better at coming back on and talking to you guys. I am just so excited about this evening's podcast. I am excited about the things that we are doing with this podcast in the circle of healing and with our community. And I just want to share with you what we do. We are a community trauma program, and what we do is that we aid and we help people with grief, how to heal from grief, how to deal with grief, how to process grief. And I just wanted to recap tonight because we had an awesome turnout last night with our workshop. So um I just wanted to come on and just kind of go back over some of the things that we talked about and some of the things that that hit home for us last night. So if you could just please like, share, and follow. If you know someone that is dealing with grief and um, don't know how to process it, this is your channel then. So just jumping in, just I am just convinced that once people learn how to go through the process of healing and be vulnerable in that space, that they can heal from it. Last night we talked about how healing is not a pretty thing. It's not a pretty thing. People don't like to talk about healing. They don't like to deal with healing. They like to just sweep healing underneath the rug. They like to sweep it underneath the rug until they trip over the rug. That's exactly what I said. People like to sweep grief and trauma underneath the rug until they trip over it. They don't want to deal with grief. So whenever you can have people come out to a workshop on grief and how to heal from it, that's an amazing thing because that means they're trying to be vulnerable and to be in a safe space. And I want you to know, regardless of where you are or what you're doing, you have to have a safe space. You have to have a safe space to be able to heal because you're so open and you're so vulnerable at that time. You have to make sure that you create a safe space and making sure that you have the support that you need, have the support to get through, have the support to be able to say, I need help. And they're there for you with the help. So last night we talked about, setting boundaries. One of the things you have to understand is that when you are in your healing process, when you are in your healing season, when you have decided that you want to heal, you have to set boundaries. What am I mean by boundaries? That means boundaries enough to be able to say that the space that people, places, and things used to occupy at this time, I don't have the capacity to be able to hold all of that. When you become real and say that I don't have the capacity to be able to deal with anybody else's stuff, that's just a simple way of being nice and saying no. No, I cannot be there for you at this moment. No, at this moment, I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to be able to take care of me in this moment. That's how you have to look at it. You have to look at it as that, and just in this moment, I'm going to have to set these boundaries. What does those boundaries look like? Glad you asked. Those boundaries can look like that you don't have to answer every phone call that comes through. You don't have to respond to every text message that comes through. You don't have to respond to every email that comes through. You don't have to respond to every post that you see on social media. You are setting boundaries from the things that's out that's in your normal pattern. See, those things you normally do. You normally respond to these text messages immediately. You normally, check your emails. You're normally doing this. You're normally doing that. But I want you to think about it when you're in a grieving and when you're in a healing process, that means you're doing something out of the ordinary. And because you're doing something out of the ordinary, that means you have to have boundaries and space to do that because this is an unfamiliar space for you. And when you are when you're in an unfamiliar place in your life, the last thing you can do or want to do is to try to take on everything else. I remember, 4 years ago when I was going through my healing process, I had to set those boundaries. I had to basically say what I could do and what I couldn't do. Because at that time, I didn't know how vital and how fragile I was. Because number one, let's be real. The first 6 to 7 months of my healing, I struggled. And I struggled because I did not know how to process what I was feeling, what I was dealing with. I didn't know how to process it. I did the best that I could with what I had to work with at that time. And then when I began to, and I advocate for this, when I began to start therapy and I began to start working through my own traumas and my own grief and my own, I want to say, woman in the mirror. When I began to start doing that, I became excited. I became excited, number one, because I was learning something new that I didn't know it was so vital to me at that time. At the time, I didn't know how vital it was for me. But man, I tell you, once I got to, that whole like a year of just really focusing on my healing and focusing on me and my traumas and the grief that I was dealing with and how I dealt with it, I had no choice but to start studying on being certified as a grief coach. I had no other choice. I was so excited about learning the process and knowing that I had been carrying this grief for so long, and I really didn't have to carry it that long if I knew how to work the process. If I knew how to work the process of grieving, working the process of grieving is almost like learning how to drive for the very first time. Or either I can even say riding a bike for the very first time. You know, if you think about like the anxiety and the anxiety about taking the test for driving, then not only that, being able to get behind a 2-ton vehicle and show these people that I know how to parallel park when I really don't even know my left from my right foot at this time. I remember that was me. Y'all, just a side note, let me tell you, at 20 years old, I bought my very first car at the auction. It was a Ford Taurus, y'all, and I did not even know how to drive. I mean, my dad had showed me some driving when I was very young. I mean, my dad used to, put me behind the wheel when I was like 7 or 8 years old. But in between that time, after that little span of him doing that, I really, when I became, older, I really didn't do it. But I was determined that I was gonna get me a vehicle, and I didn't care what I had to do it, but I was gonna do it. Yeah, so I went to the auction, and Imma get back to this here. I just wanna plug this in for you. But I went to the auction and I bought it, and it was a champagne color. It was a champagne color Ford Taurus, y'all. And I bought it. Me and my dad went there. And my dad didn't have no clue that, I really hadn't been practicing. I bought the vehicle. And all I can remember me saying that I need to make sure I just remember my left and my right. Like I need to know what foot is for the brake and which foot is for the gas. And when I tell y'all, I pulled out of that auction. Thank God for grace and mercy because I didn't hit nobody. I didn't tear up nothing. At that time, I ain't turned nothing up. You know what I'm saying? I was able. Some of that came back to me. A little bit of skills, but not much. And when I tell you, it was a process. Me relearning or learning how to really drive, y'all, I used to tear up some stuff. Nobody told me that I had to look at that little, nobody told me I had to look at that little rear view mirror when I'm backing up. Nobody told me I had to look at that. Nobody had to tell me that. So I would Cloverleaf Mall, I would be there and I would back up, boom. And I'd be like, what was that? Blown off. Nobody told me about the rear view mirror. Nobody told me about that. And that's the same exact thing that how I want to kind of like tie that into that is because even though nobody, I didn't remember or nobody told me that I needed to look in their rear view mirror. I know a lot of times people tell you, oh, you should never be looking back. You should always be looking forward. But what happens when it's a key part? When you looking back is a key part of your healing. What about when looking back long enough to see where this trauma is coming from? I'm not saying stay in that rear view mirror. What I'm saying is that some every now and then, like when you backing up, you gotta look at it. You gotta look into that mirror and make sure that everything is clear. It's the same exact thing when you are self-evaluating, when you're self-evaluating about how you feel and how your trauma is affecting you, how your grief is affecting you, how it's affecting your body, how it's affecting you just period. How is it just affecting you? Period. Then every now and then you gotta say, I gotta take this time. And I know it's not easy for us. You know what I'm saying? The last thing, people like, why you want to be a grief coach? You know what I'm saying? That's so depressing. No, it's not depressing. It's so freeing. When I tell you that when you get to a place of healing and it becomes a it becomes a how can I describe it? When you are in a better place. What that means you mentally are better, you are physically better, you're socially better. You know what I'm saying? You're a better person for yourself, you're a better person for your family. You're not boggled down, you're not stressed, you're just living in the overflow of that I got past it. We always say, our past don't define us. But I beg to differ. Sometimes our past do define us when we talking about trauma, when you talking about grief. So just look at that on that point of view. Have you ever seen like a cycle of something in a family? So I want you to really think about that. And then last night we dealt with two parts of, last night we really dug in on two key things when you're in the grieving process. We talked about anger and anxiety. The two big A's, the two big A's, anger and anxiety. And what we talked about is we talked about how you got to make sure that anxiety does not define you. Where you begin to realize that anxiety does not define you and who you are, that's when you have to begin to start building yourself. When you start building yourself and says, we talked about, because anxiety can be paralyzing. Anxiety can take you to a whole nother place, to where you can't even function. Where it'll paralyze you in your thoughts, in your very moment. You know what I'm saying? Always on edge, always in panic. And you have to be able to know how to combat those. How do you combat those feelings? Number one, we talked about is sitting in it. You have to acknowledge, what you are feeling. So I'm gonna show you what the little worksheet that we did. So y'all, this is my wall right here. This is my grief wall of healing. So I use this to basically help and coach people through. But I want to pull some of the stuff that we did last night. So one of the ones we did last night was called "Sit with Your Feelings." It was called "Sit with Your Feelings." So I encourage everybody to at least sit in whatever they're dealing with for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And the first thing I told them that they needed to acknowledge and allow themselves to feel. It ain't, and I'm gonna be 100% real with you. It's not, it don't feel good in that moment. In that moment, it don't feel good to be able to say that for 5 minutes, I am going to allow this anger or anxiety to take over me so I can process why I'm feeling this. See, we keep having a cycle of anger and anxiety is because we're never getting to the root problem or the root cause of what's triggering this anxiety, why my body is responding this way. We don't take that time because what we like we talked about it in there when we start feeling those feelings come on we use the whole something else, whether it be, oh, I'm gonna start washing dishes, oh, I'm gonna do some more work, I'm gonna look at some more emails, I'm gonna do this. We avoid it. We do, what I'm saying, maybe music, whatever it is, whatever we do, we try to avoid it. We try to avoid dealing with those feelings and emotions. And if I can tell you right now, when you can get to a place to say that my feelings matter and it's okay that I'm feeling this way. See, sometimes you have to give yourself a little grace and have a little compassion on yourself. This is something new. Just like going back to riding a bike or either trying to learn how to drive a car. You think about that, acknowledging it. I mean, that means so 5 minutes, that means in a safe space. That means you need to take time to process this. Always making sure that you got something to be able to journal this so you can understand how you need to address this and allow yourself to feel it without judgment. I know that's the hard one because that one was hard for me when I first started the process of my healing, years ago. I all I know is that it was hard. It was hard for me not to place judgment on myself because in our Black communities, we have been taught that be strong, what I'm saying, don't be weak, what I'm saying, don't show no vulnerability, what I'm saying, be strong, be strong, be strong. We that was drilled into us. We were drilled, it was drilled into us not to feel anything. Let's just be real. And I would judge myself very hard. Like, oh, you weak for feeling these feelings, you weak for doing this, you weak for doing that. And then when I understood that in my weakest is when I gained the most strength. The more I sat in it, the more strength I put on. But the more I avoided it and the more that I didn't deal with my feelings and how I felt, and then not only that, having a little compassion on myself, having a little compassion to say that you're human. You're supposed to have emotions. And when you're not processing all of those emotions, when you're only just using the emotions that serve you, it's not good. So have a little compassion on yourself and be able to say that, I can be weak in this moment. I can be vulnerable in this moment because I deserve this moment. You deserve the right to be able to heal from whatever trauma, whatever basic, whether it be the loss of a loved one, whether it be the loss of a relationship, whether it be the loss of a job, or whatever that loss is, whatever it has caused you trauma, whatever it has caused you to grieve. You have the right to be able to feel the way you want to feel about it and have some compassion on yourself. And being able to say that, I'm not in a good place. I'm not this grief thing is taking me to a whole different place. See, when you're learning something new, it's always frightening. And especially with when you're in the healing process because you're very weak. And that's why you got to make sure you have the right support, the right people around you, the right ones that won't take advantage of your vulnerability, not taking advantage of you in that moment. And when you sit in it, you have to be able to say, these feelings are valid that I'm feeling. Number one, you got to ask yourself some questions. What am I feeling? And then after you ask yourself, what am I feeling? Then you have to say, why am I feeling it? What triggered this? So you have to know that sometimes it can be things that trigger you in your environment, in your space, and you don't even know it. It'll just trigger you. I remember last month, um, I don't know, I just was feeling heavy and I'm like, what in the world is going on? I'm like, where is this? I felt heavy. And I'm like, where is this coming from? I know I feel grief. I know that I can now acknowledge and know when it's grief and that I needed to take a moment to be in silence and just silence myself to figure it out. And I said, okay, let me just pull myself away for a moment and see what's going on here. And just in that 5 minutes, I was able to identify why I was feeling anxious, why I was feeling that grief. It was because I was coming up on the anniversary, like the 5th year anniversary of my mentor of 15 years. It was a trigger. It was a trigger on the calendar. I mean, the calendar is the calendar, but it triggered me. And I wasn't even really consciously looking at the dates because not only is and the way it falls is that my grandmother's birthday is one day and my mentor's birthday is the very next day, and they both were deceased. They both are deceased. So that was like a double whammy. It was like a double whammy, but I didn't subconsciously, I began to start grieving it. But if I didn't sit down in a moment to feel it, not only to feel it, but to recognize it, I probably would still be going through right now. And then the once I was able to identify it, what I was feeling, or whatever the case may be, did a little bit of journaling with it, and just began to start working the process of, what I'm saying, breathing through it. I'm saying, the things that, what I'm saying, and just start in the beginning stages of healing. your worst enemy for me was trying to memorize or think about memories about someone that I lost or the things I lost or the jobs I lost. Memories was the hardest and it's going to be the hardest. And I'm grateful now that I'm able to sit back and have great moments of his teachings, his wisdom, just his love for people and just the love of, you know what I'm saying, just of his community and all of that. Now I can sit back and I can reminisce on that and I can feel great about that. Now, was I there 4 years ago? Oh no, I wasn't. Even with my grandmother, with her birthday being the day before, then I could sit back and I could, think about her. I remember as a little girl, y'all, I remember she used to make homemade biscuits for her father. And on the weekends, she would go to his house and I mean, it would take her all day just to make a dozen of biscuits. And I would sit there patiently and I would watch her. These are great memories now, but I couldn't handle that, a while back. And I would sit there all day and I would sit there and watch her take her time and make these butter biscuits from scratch. And I watched every step that she made. And I dare not move because I knew that if I stayed to the end process, that on the other side of that, I was gonna get a nice hot biscuit with some butter and some grape jelly. Why am I saying all that? I'm saying all of that is because if I would have decided that in the middle of her kneading the dough together or whatever, and I decided I was gonna, go outside and hang out with my cousins and all of that, I would have missed a step in watching her make these biscuits. Not only that, not only would have missed out on the steps that she took to make these biscuits, I also would have missed out on the biscuit. I also would have missed out on the biscuit. So what I'm saying is that that's how healing is. You can't skip, you can't skip around. You're gonna feel it's like, they tell you, that there's where it is. Let me look at my wall. Give me a second. Um Give me a second. I can't seem to see it right this moment. But what they tell you that there's different. Here we go. Thank you. I got it. I got it. So so when you going through the grieving process, they tell you that it's steps: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And, in the real world, what I'm saying, we would think that it will look like this right here. You know what I'm saying? That you're going to go through each one of these steps, but actually, this is what it looks like. When you grieving, man, you go through all of these emotions at one time. You'll be feeling denial, anger, bargaining, depression, guilt, numbness, anxiety, all of that. You're gonna feel all of that all at one time. All that at one time. It's not just like a skip and a hop. You're gonna feel all of that at one time at some point in time. And what you gotta do with it is you gotta process it. You gotta process it and you gotta know how to process it. You gotta be able to say that if I sit in this for a few moments and be able to see exactly what am I grieving. And a lot of times when we talked about it in our workshop, we realized that a lot of the stuff that we were grieving was from our childhood. I always tell you that you're gonna find trauma and grief in behind a door. And if you've heard this before, and I keep iterating, if you've ever heard these two phrases that a child is to be seen and not heard, and what happens behind and what happens in my house, stay in my house. That's a breeding ground for grief and trauma. That's a breeding ground for it. And we've taken it from generation to generation to where now we knocking the door down. We screaming loud. Sadly, the way our kids are doing exactly, what I'm saying, what we taught them, and then now we gotta, we walking around trying to figure out why we walking around with high blood pressure, diabetes, knees hurting, back hurting, neck hurting, head hurting, heart hurting. All these things are hurting is because your body is giving you signals that you have stored trauma, you have stored grief that you ain't dealt with. In the journey, and as you take in the journey, you'll understand that you can't carry that. I don't know. I just be thinking like, the closer next Wednesday, Lord willing, I'll be 50 years old. And I began almost 2 years ago to start revisiting getting healthy and, just be real, losing some weight. I was overweight. When I would go for my blood work was garbage. You know what I'm saying? I started seeing early signs of stuff that I wanted to prevent. So I took action, and I went through not only a not only just a mental healing. I went on a spiritual healing and a physical healing. I decided to take my health more serious. I decided to, excuse me, I decided to start taking my health more serious and understanding that I've been dealing with my grief and I've been dealing with my trauma. Now all of this weight was my body way of protecting me from all of this anxiety, all of this cortisol, all of this stuff, that I was storing because number one, I just simply didn't know how to deal with it. And that's the thing about it is that we got to be real that we simply haven't been taught how to breathe, how to come out on the other side. All we've ever been taught is just be strong, get through it. I got through it. And then just keep trickling that down. So I'm all about this whole sitting in your stuff for 5 minutes, acknowledging, acknowledging your feeling and the way you feeling, having some compassion on yourself. The biggest one is practicing that compassion. And don't be upset with yourself because you had a weaker moment. I've gotten to a place now that, what I'm saying, I schedule grief time. And that's what I'm trying to teach people in workshops because I'm at a place now where grief used to knock me to my knees to the point of, not being able to get up, not being able to shower, not being able to function in daily life things. I've been there, so when I came out on the other side and like I said, getting certified to do this, I understood that it was important. And you need to take it as important. If you think about it, your most prized possession. I had to have a mindset that my most prized possession was me. And if I didn't prioritize me to heal from it, then what am I going to be stuck with? And then just in that time, I began, lost over 100 plus pounds. I want to say probably like 110, 115, somewhere around there. Began to start, going hand in hand with, saying therapy, working through it, saying body transforming, having a better mindset, sitting in it. You know what I'm saying? When that, like I said, I schedule grief time. Now I do because I'm like, okay, the other day something kind of bubbled up a little bit and I didn't address it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I can't replay back, you know what I'm saying, what it was. But what I do know is that when you quiet yourself long enough to be able to hear yourself, it'll come to you. So when I'm scheduling 5 minutes to examine myself and to basically to say that I'm acknowledging this, what I'm also doing is not allowing grief to knock me down. Now don't get me wrong. Now I have my days where, you know what I'm saying, I have some weeping days. You'll have some weeping days, but those days that you're doing that, that's a cleansing, that's a refreshing. That's me putting on more strength to be able to keep digging deeper. When I decide I want to keep digging deeper, that means that when I, my whole I'm such a place now in my life that come cars, homes, all that stuff is great. My kids gonna have it anyway. But if I can leave them a legacy of healing, it's worth more than all of these worldly assets put together. Because what I think about is that if I am healed, that means I'm opening the door for my kids to see that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to heal. It's okay for me to feel. I am giving them a voice to what they're feeling. Not only that, I'm breaking some generational things because no one dealt with, no one dealt with the trauma in the family. See, grief and trauma and all of that is so much bigger than just losing a loved one. It's so much bigger than that because you have to understand that grief is anything that, what I'm saying, that has caused you trauma, that has caused you to lose something. You know what I'm saying? A loss of something. So I don't want my kids to grieve something that they've lost because I didn't take the time to just work through my healing. And not only that, just to be frank and just to be honest with them. You know what I'm saying? Just being honest with them. And so then then not only that, then so in this workshop, so after we moved from sitting in it for 5 minutes, that's the anxiety part that we talked about. And we talked about making sure that we speak to that anxiety as well. Because when you talk about grief, a lot of times you're dealing with anxiety. And like I said, anxiety will paralyze you. So what we do from that point is that we talked about making sure we talk to anxiety. And one of the biggest things is you have to say is that anxiety does not define me. You have to be able to speak to that thing and say, you don't define me because I'm going to sit right here in it. I'm going to sit in it. I'm going to figure out what it is. And then once I figure out what it is, I'm going to journal it. And then I'm going to keep working through it. And then I'm going to keep visiting it. That's how you heal. Heal is repetitive, just like getting behind the wheel of a car, just like riding a bike. It's repetitive. You got to keep doing it and keep doing it until you master it. No matter, even you think about it, how many, what I'm saying, light poles I hit, no matter how many scraped knees I got from trying to learn how to ride a bike, I never stopped. I never stopped until I perfected how to drive that parallel park. I perfected where riding a bicycle where I didn't even have to use my hands. I had skills to where I could go without using my hands. It's the same exact thing with this healing. It's repetitive. It's keep going through it, keep sitting in it, keep wallowing in it, keep sitting in it, keep getting up, until you get to a place of saying that, oh, I got this. I got this. Okay, I need to sit myself down and I need to go ahead and silence myself. Silence everything around me, silence my mind, silence everything around me, and focus on why I'm feeling this. Then the next one that we talked about last night, I'm gonna grab this off of this board here. The last one we talked about last night was that anger. We talked about anger last night, and let me grab it off my wall right here, y'all. Give me 1 second. And then, so I told you the two big A's we dealt with last night was anger and anxiety. So we didn't kind of address the anxiety. So then what we talked about last night is the anger volcano. The anger volcano. Then this one was good because we did like a whole little exercise. So we talked about like how anger is like a volcano. And these are like the behaviors that we see up front. You know what I'm saying? When a volcano is erupting, we see withdrawal, we see yelling, shutting down, refusal, you know what I'm saying, fighting, arguing, temper tantrums, refusing, just anger. And then just remember, all those things don't have to be physical. They could be actually going on in the inside of you. That's the key part. Those things could be going on in you. But we talked about what's the root cause of a volcano erupting. And the natural is something that's going on in the earth. But we talked about the things that cause you to erupt like a volcano. And and if you notice, I so it's like three levels. It's like three levels of different colors of basically how it all erupts. In this yellow right here, we're gonna think about this as the earth part of it. Anxiety, grief, feeling threatened, stress, jealousy, rejection, insecure. Then we move into a little lighter orange, and then we talk about traumas, unforgiveness, helplessness, pain, hunger, tired, fear. Then we move into we move in now this time it done got real hot. So that means this is about to get ready to explode on us. Then we talk about disappointment, guilt, loneliness, frustration, embarrassment, confusion, and being overwhelmed. All of that right there causes this inside of you. And then you burning people and you burning situations and places and things because you have erupted because you haven't been able to deal with those things. And then what we did was is that we circled how many of these underlying things cause us to erupt. And I think I think the least number in the room was like maybe 7. So it's a total of like about 15 on here. And I think about 7 was the least number that were circled. And then, so what I had them to do was we took one of them on here was tired. Okay. That's like that middle line one. We talked about being tired. And I told them, I said, now this is how you're going to address this so you can be able to address this grief part, the anger part of grief. If you saying you tired, what I had them to do is that I wanted them to put little, just like balloons. I wanted them to basically balloons from it, and I wanted them to show that, okay, if I'm tired, what am I tired of? I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of having anxiety. I'm tired of dealing with grief. I'm tired with my fears. I'm tired of feeling rejected. I'm tired of feeling insecure. Okay. So once you're feeling that, okay, what are you feeling insecure about? Then you're gonna make another bubble of all the things that I'm feeling insecure about. I'm feeling insecure about, you know what I'm saying? Blah, 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 whatever it is, whatever it is. Okay. Because if you don't identify them, you cannot heal from anything that you have not identified. Anything that you have not identified is no way you can heal from it because you haven't acknowledged it. You have not acknowledged it. And then we talk about anxiety. What's causing us anxiety? What are the things that's causing us anxiety? What's causing us grief? So when you start tying all those things together, that understanding that a volcano is the most beautiful thing to look at when it's not erupting, but it is devastating when it does erupt. It takes people homes, it takes lives, it kills whatever livestock, whatever is growing, it kills all of that. I need you to think about that the same exact way. I need you to I had to think about it that way, that if I erupt every time because of my anger, if I erupt, what am I killing around me? So be slow to anger. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to understand what you turn down and what you're destroying in the path of just that moment of anger because we didn't take the time to deal with the underlying grief, the underlying anxiety, the underlying trauma. We ain't deal with it. We ain't deal with. So, I get so at the end of it, when we were finished with it, even one of the guys, I was so like he said, he said, I really couldn't circle any of them because at some point in time, because I I'm always giving, I felt a little of all of these. And I was like, wow, that's so honest for him to be able to recognize in that moment that, you know what I'm saying? I deal with a little bit of all of these because I neglect myself. So what of course I told him? Boundaries. Yup, boundaries. So those two big A's, anxiety and anger, should no longer be a thing that's gonna rule you. Because number one, you got to talk. Number one, it's all about going back to sitting in it, acknowledging your feelings, giving yourself some compassion, talking to that thing that my anxiety does not define me, setting boundaries, making sure that people understand that hey, I'm in my healing era, so I just need at this time, I don't have anything to give you. I don't have anything. I have to set this boundary. No, I can't take this call. No, I can't take this email. No, I can't do this. No, I can't do that. You have to do it. And then tying this up in a bow for tonight is what type of volcano do you want to be? Do you want to be an eruptive one, inactive volcano, or active volcano? Now, just remember, you can choose to do or choose to be either one. But remember, the active one is going to destroy everything in its path, including yourself. And because it can not only just destroy everything around you, it can also destroy you. I I actually go back and revisit that. Start dealing with the disappointment, the loneliness, the frustration, the overwhelm, the confusion, the embarrassment, being tired, fear, being stressed out, feeling unfair, trauma, grief, anxiety, threat, rejection, insecure. You go on and on and on. Once you start dealing with all of that, it's all one. It's all together. It's just like sand on the beach. You're not gonna be able to separate it. It is all together, and So the end outcome of that is that I task them to sit in it once a week for 5 minutes. Take their time and address one of those underlying things that's causing them to erupt. And I tasked them with doing that because what I wanted to show them is that you can work on it. It don't have to always knock you down. And if it does knock you down, that means you got to get up and put the work in. Nothing, not you can't get anything without putting the work in. And when I say anything, I mean anything. If you even think about the smallest thing, you still got to put the work in to get up to. If you got a plate of food on the table, it still takes effort to get up and go walk to the table to eat. So I am. I'm gonna wrap this up tonight, and I hope me sharing my story. What I'm saying, how I came out on the other side. Me have basically made this my mission to help a grieving world to heal. I hope that you will like, follow, share. If you know someone that's dealing with grief, dealing with these things, and don't know how to process it, come back to this channel. Matter of fact, or either even follow us. Follow us on Instagram at Circle of Healing VA. And I just want to thank you for tonight coming on and being able to recap. I'm looking forward to next month, and just to get the testimonies of how everybody set in their stuff, set in their feelings with compassion on themselves. I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that, and I appreciate you tuning into my channel, and I will be back with more good stuff. I'm gonna keep coming back with this. I told you my world mission is to heal a people of grieving people. Simply, that's my task, and that's my lane, and that's where I'm driving. This is your girl, Coach Vonda. Have a good night, and I'm gonna talk to you soon.